repeating, which this is Candace Owens' language, that Brigitte Macron, Emmanuel Macron's wife, the French president's wife, has a penis. And Trump was saying, hey, Candace, they're really getting annoyed that you're doing this so much. Can you maybe stop a little bit? I'm needing his help on some things. Craziest phone call a president's ever made. Hi, podcaster. I need you to stop saying that the French president's wife, do they say first lady there? I don't know. Whatever the title is, has a penis. I think we need to just back off on that. Sincerely, DJT. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So I'm going to play for you Candace Owens explaining this, but this also is a part of a broader thing I want to talk about, which is now that we're one step closer to Trump's bill passing the House. So it passed the Senate, revised. Now the revised version has to be passed by the House, and then Trump will sign into law. Terrible bill, so unpopular, destroying people's lives, ripping away necessary services in service of tax cuts for the rich. And that means that right-wing media is gonna go wild on the culture wars, on the trans, on the Brigitte Macron's genitals, on Fauci needs to be in prison. Like, it's just gonna be Biden, let's reassess. Was Biden, how old really was Biden? If we really get down to it, how old really was he? How bad was the debate? Like, they're gonna want to talk about everything but the most consequential pieces of legislation in a generation. That's the wrong wording. One of the most destructive pieces of legislation in a generation. There we go. Step aside, civil rights. You're not as notable. But here's Candace Owens doing that, right? Which is she's running around on her show. Invest tonight on Candace Owens. Investigating Brigitte Macron's genitalia, which is what she's doing. She's done this long series. Now, let me just tell you might be wondering, it's a lie. It's been debunked a bunch of times. Brigitte Macron won a defamation case based on other people bringing this up. There's this obsession. She's a trans woman and she still has a penis from being a biological man. And it is defamatory. And it's weird. Like, let's imagine it weren't. It is. But let's imagine it weren't defamatory. What are you doing, Candace? This isn't even the American First Lady. And it still would be weird. It would still be weird. It's the French First Lady's genitals you're talking about? What happened? That's insane. But we're going to be hearing a lot about stories like this now that they don't want to talk about the biggest news item.
Anyways, I sleep on that. Anger is subsiding. Wake up the next morning. It's February 26th, and I am sitting in the makeup chair, and I get another message that's like, hey, keep your phone on. And I'm going, I really don't want to speak to this advisor anymore. I really don't. Our personalities are not meshing. And anyways, this phone call is coming from Florida. Pick up the phone, and lo and behold, so here's what happened. I'm negotiating this thing. I'm negotiating Ukraine and Russia, and you wouldn't believe how many parts are part. It is President Donald J. Trump. He is calling me, and in true President Trump fashion, he jumps right into the narrative. We're not, hey, how you doing? He just jumps right into the narrative of exactly how this went down. I am literally, it is hard to catch my breath to comprehend that 4 days ago, I'm ending a series about Brigitte Macron,
is it Brigitte? Sorry. I keep saying Brigitte. Brigitte. Sorry. I'm sorry. Someone's gonna, oh my gosh, the emails. Put it in the same folder we put the annals thing in.
And now I'm speaking to the President of the United States, and the topic of conversation, no matter which way you want to slice it, it's about Macron's wife's penis. I mean, there's no other way to say it, right? And so he just jumps right into the narrative. He's like, I'm negotiating. You wouldn't believe how many pieces this person wants this person, and this person wants this, and you have no idea how much is involved when you're trying to get one of these deals done, Anyways, I have Macron. I like Macron. We're speaking at the White House, and I'm walking him to his car. And, he says to me, Mr. President, can I speak to you for a second? I say, of course you can speak to me about anything. What's going on?
I think my impression's better. Of course you can speak to me. Wow. Speak away, Emmanuel. When you grab my hand...
You're my daddy.
Oh, I want to say that. There we go.
He tells me that there's Secret Service all around them. There's SUVs. They're encircled. And Macron wants to have a little sidebar. And then Macron says to him, Mr. President, do you know Candace Owens? And I say, yes, of course I know Candace Owens. What's going on? And then the president says to me, you must be a very powerful person, Candace. We're talking about the president of France taking me aside to talk about your podcast. And then continues his narrative, and he tells me that Emmanuel Macron is requesting to his face that I stop speaking about his wife. And one of the things Trump said is like, he tells me, she's old, and this is really, really impacting her.
Yeah, so the whole, like, I'm sure it's in France too, the whole French and American right wing, every time Macron's in the news cycle is Brigitte's penis, right? Over and over again. Y'all are creepy. Like, I try not to go, you know how people make the point that few people have witnessed a movement as concerned with just genitals in general as the MAGA movement. Like Nancy Mace is wanting to do genital checks every time you go in the restroom, and Lauren Boebert's up in there somehow. And they have like teams of people monitoring the Capitol bathrooms just in case, just to check. And then stuff like this, which what even would the consequence be? It's a lie. I just want to make that clear, because sometimes these narratives get going, but even if it weren't, who cares? Who cares? It doesn't make any sense, and it's a lie. And so, but I try not to say, like, sometimes people bring up, like I just did with the bathrooms, sometimes trans subjects, the way that MAGA talks about it becomes very genital obsessed. But I get, like, if you're just talking about trans sports or something, I'm not going to accuse you of, oh, you're obsessed with genitals, aren't you? Oh, you want to see? I'm not going to do that, I promise. I get that we can have nuanced conversations about trans topics and not instantly devolve into, you're a groomer. Well, you obsessed over genitals. Like, that's not going to get us anywhere. I get it. What do you call this, though? What do you call this, though? That there are Candace Owens has gone on all these interviews, and people are like, now tell us about Brigitte Macron's penis. Why are we doing this? It's creepy. If she weren't a public figure, you would just be a sexually harassing stalker.
And I'm listening, and he's, in one of Trump monologues, he's very funny. And then he said, I saw her, Candace, I saw her up close. And she looks like a woman to me. I had dinner with her at the top of the Eiffel Tower. And I explained to him that she has had this amazing doctor who specializes in transgenderism surgeries or feminization procedures. I'm talking to the President of the United States about this, guys. This is crazy. This is wacky. But I'm just giving it as good as I get. I'm just trying to get him to understand the truth. And then I explained to him why I don't feel so great about this request, because that's the more important part. Like, you are requesting that I really, and despite your reasoning, which is very sound, that I stop telling the truth. Yeah. And I said to Trump,
nobody. My microphone just attacked me, sorry. That just scared me. Nobody is going to tell Candace Owens she can't tell the truth. You have flocks of people. Get a load of the bravery of Candace Owens. You have people upon people saying, Candace, stop being a creep and talking about the French president's wife's penis that she doesn't have. And I say, I will... Just like Martin Luther King Jr., I will not stop telling the truth, even in the face of adversity.
And I will be honest that at that moment I realized that one day this is going to go into my autobiography, and so I got to say something funny. And I said to him, respectfully, Mr. President, it's not my fault that he married someone with a penis. He then tells me, we're really close to getting this thing done. He tells me again, Macron's been really good to me. He's been very easy to work with us. He's been a good person. He just wants me to get this one thing done. And he throws in the art of the deal type stuff. He starts complimenting me. He said, Melania loves you. She says, you're so beautiful. She thinks you're so beautiful. I said, thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Compliments will get you everywhere in life is my mentality here. And then I say to him what I've agreed to already in the back of my head. I say, look, I'm happy to do this for the short term. Obviously, I don't want to have on my conscience that less Christian men could have died in the East if I just shut up about something. But I'm very clear to him that...
Yeah. I'm sure what's withholding the Ukraine-Russia peace deal is that was a crazy pause. Sorry. I'm sure what's withholding I'm sure what's keeping Putin's... Gosh, I wish I had a Putin impression. Let me think. Fine, I won't. Okay, fine, I won't. Jaden. Fine, I won't. I'll just do my voice. I would stop invading... I would stop invading Ukraine if it weren't for Candace Owens exposing Emmanuel Macron's wife's penis that she doesn't have.
Yeah. This is going to be short term. And that I fully expect that in a few months I will be able to speak about this. And this is the point of the conversation where it actually gets quite interesting because he says yes, and I am now adding to you what I sensed. Like he was about to commit to that, but then it felt to me like someone in the background was like, no, we need this conversation to stop altogether. And then he doesn't say no or yes, but he just says, that he really needs to work with Macron long term, and they have this long working relationship. And I was very clear, this is not long term for me. Like if you're close to this deal, ink it, let's get it done. And then he sort of offers at the end, he says, hey, maybe I can come on your podcast one day. I'm great for ratings. They're so Trumpian to give yourself a compliment. So I give him the Trump right back. And I say respectfully, Mr. President, I'm apparently good for ratings too, because you've got a leader of a country, the president of the country, asking you to ask me to do a favor. So let me end the conversation.
Maybe Trump, despite how horrible he is, even Trump is like, wait, why is she obsessed with this? This is weird. Did I say click the subscribe button? I feel like I'm forgetting so frequently. It's free, right? You just like that. It makes that sound. You click it. It's free, but then YouTube suggests videos to you because you can't miss this, Like, what would you have done today? How could you have been happy today if it weren't for hearing from Candace Owens about her phone call with Trump, about Trump hearing from Macron that Macron's wife doesn't have a penis and that Macron wants Candace Owens, an American podcaster, to stop talking about it because it's creepy and it sparks a lot of insane backlash and threats and weirdness, and Trump is denied by Candace Owens. What would you have done if you couldn't have heard about the story? And maybe you wouldn't have seen it if you weren't subscribed. Well, you did see it, so maybe you are. Very confusing. Here is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. To my point about Here's Bobby weighing in on Emmanuel Macron's wife's genitals. No, that's not what it is. That's what you thought I was going. Instead, I bring this up to say we're going to hear a lot about weird stories like what Candace Owens is saying to distract, because they got to do something that gets ratings, but it can't be talking about the biggest news item, which is Trump ripping away people's health care and service of tax cuts for the rich. So it has to be something else. So I referenced at the beginning, maybe it'll be Fauci or Biden stories. And that's exactly what's going on. Tucker Carlson interviewing Bobby, and Bobby says Fauci started COVID.
So one of the reasons that the system has become so corrupt, I think it's fair to say, is Anthony Fauci, one of the longest serving federal employees, who was the subject of one of the best-selling books of a couple of years ago, which you wrote, The Real Anthony Fauci, amazing book. And all
terrible book filled with lies.
This information about him was exposed to the world, and he gets some sinecure at Georgetown and still has Secret Service protection. He seems to be thriving.
He doesn't have Secret Service protection
any longer.
No, President Trump took that away from him. But
good.
He got immunity. Why did he need immunity? Why did he need a pardon in advance?
What do you think the answer is?
I would be speculating, but I think I think he was vulnerable. I think he had a lot of liability on creating the coronavirus. You know, he was funding precisely that research at the Wuhan lab.
Yep.
And he was giving them the
Yep. Tucker there with his herpes. If Candace gets to say that about Macron's wife, I get to say that about Tucker. He has herpes. Or one of those demons came back and
radicalized.
Maybe one of the demons came back that he told us about and gave him herpes. Or it was his dog and it scratched his mouth, which is actually what happened. But Tucker goes, why is it? I'm just asking, why would it be that, and this is true, by the way, that Fauci would get Secret Service protection and a pardon from Biden? Why would it be because he created coronavirus? He lived an entire life in public service, in public health, so that at the end of his career he could start a pandemic so that then he could try to stop it? Why would he do that? Would he do that so that he could get a pardon? Not even bringing up, this is what I hate. I try to tell y'all what they're saying, right? Here's what MAGA would say as their argument, and I disagree with it, but here's at least, so at least you can go, okay, I'm gonna contemplate it. They don't even bring up what the reason is that Fauci got a pardon. Hey, maybe it's because a bunch of freaks like y'all kept saying Trump needs to prosecute Fauci. So in the interest of preventing Trump's retribution, like he's now doing to people, similar reasons he gave to the January 6th committee, we're going to just make sure they don't get harassed. The cases would fail, but it would still be harassment. You have to spend money protecting yourself. And then they're ripping away Secret Service protection, but he gets all these threats because of lies from people like Tucker and Bobby Kennedy. And we've examined their claims about the gain of function research and Wuhan and how they distort that to build this narrative. But it's dangerous, and things like this we're going to be hearing more and more and more and more about as the lives of their voters are destroyed. They need to give them something else to think about. Share your thoughts in the comments.